we are honored to have this gentleman right here, who is the Dean of the Faculty of Architecture and Civil Engineering at Lublin University of Technology. It is a great honor. The floor is yours, sir.
Dear colleagues, I represent ICOMOS Poland team, and we elaborated a model of the management plan for the World Heritage Properties, and we also implemented that model in Zamość, and therefore the title of the presentation is as you see. Dear colleagues, in every historic city there are many partners who have different needs, problems, interests and goals. These partners are connected by the fact that they operate in the common historic area, so they should be called the stakeholders. However, these stakeholders represent interests, needs and goals that are not consistent. For example, heritage restorers in a historic city want to keep as much historic elements and values as possible. That is, the restorers want to preserve the authenticity and integrity of the entire old city. Therefore, the restorer's goal is to limit as much as possible contemporary transformations and investments. But on the other hand, the managers of a historic city want to create the best condition for its users, especially for residents and tourists. This requires adapting historical objects and urban space to contemporary functions and standards. So it must be clearly stated that the needs and goals of the stakeholders groups are contradictory in many aspects. The only solution to this conflict of interest is to build a compromise. However, building a compromise in such difficult condition is not easy. It requires two elements: framework program, theoretical assumption that will define the principles and limits for the compromise being built, and the second element, tools that are working, that on the working level will determine how this compromise will be reached and implemented. These two elements, so for the historic cities, such a program has been formulated in the HUL Recommendation, while the management plan should be the tool. These two elements were used in Zamość, and I would like to present some aspects of this activity, but starting with the UNESCO HUL Recommendation. The HUL Recommendation is a doctrinal text adopted by UNESCO. The HUL Recommendation defines the way in which the heritage and its protection should be considered in the context of other tasks and processes in the historical city. Recommendation states that the heritage protection is only one of the factors which should be taken into account in the historical city. And therefore, the planning process should take into consideration also development of the city, and as a consequence, the heritage protection becomes not final goal, but the means which leads to sustainable development of the historical city, and also professionals should determine the heritage values together with local communities. All these ideas relate to the way in which heritage should be considered. To fully evaluate the new program of HUL Recommendation, it can be compared to the previous recommendation concerning historical cities adopted by UNESCO in 1976. Here I collected the most important aspects. So the first point is the subject. Previously, we had only a historical city. Nowadays, we have much broader notion, historical urban landscape. The second point, the subject of the analysis. Also, in the previous attitude, that was also heritage and monuments. Nowadays, we have all elements we could see in the historic city. The attitude toward the changes, very important aspect. Firstly, the attitude toward the changes was negative. Nowadays, we accept changes. The supreme aim of the activities undertaken in historical city, only protection of the heritage values, Nowadays, we don't have supreme aim. The way to determine the aims and the values, previously only specialists, now specialists with the public consultations, and the aim of the actions, previously only protection, now protection and all other purposes and aims. So summing up, one can say that the HUL recommendation presents the holistic, integrated perception of heritage in the historical city, and that the protection of heritage is only one of the tasks which should be carried out in a historical city. The second element is the management plan. The principles formulated in the HUL recommendation guide the management of historical city. They create the area for seeking a compromise by the stakeholders. In practice, this means that all the most important goals, protection, residents' needs, development of tourism, should be analyzed and solved through the cooperation with stakeholders. Therefore, at the operational level, a tool is needed that comprehensively covers the needs, goals, and interests of all stakeholders. The management plan with an appropriate structure is such a tool. The ICOMOS Poland, based on HUL recommendation philosophy and the requirements set out in the World Heritage Properties, developed the management plan model. It is as follows. You see, we have 3 points or chapters in that structure: characteristic of the World Heritage Sites, characteristic of the system of the protection, and characteristic of use of the place. This structure shows that the protection of the site, the points number 2, and its modern use, the points number 3, are treated equally. It should be also added that in this structure, a specially dedicated model for assessing values is used, also developed by our team. Based on this structure, the management plans have been prepared for several historic properties, and it is necessary to add that the preparation of the management plan is obligatory condition for the candidates on the World Heritage List. So the last point, the tourism in the management plan of Zamość. This model became the basis for the development of the management plan for Zamość, which is, of course, on the World Heritage List. The management plan was developed at the request of the City Council, which wanted a document that would comprehensively plan conservation activities, investment plans, and tourism development. The analysis of many elements and factors has enabled indicate a number of investments activities that, without limiting the protection of the historic values of Zamość, simultaneously improve the tourism infrastructure of the historic area. This is, among others, I would like to show only a few examples. So that was the connection of the old town with a lake, which is very close to the city. Secondly, that was the land development in front of the Zamoyski Palace as a public space connecting the palace with the old town complex. Construction of a multifunctional cultural center in the buffer zone, restricting car traffic and parking in the old town area, distribution of activities organized on the Grand Market, organizing a city bike system. Finally, I would like to emphasize that measurements to improve the tourist infrastructure in Zamość could be proposed, of course, without the whole attitude and without the analysis carried out in the management plan. However, now these all proposals forming part a comprehensive program for the protection and development of the historical downtown of Zamość. The program which conservators have agreed with the city managers and stakeholders. Therefore, summing up, management plan for the historic city is a tool that allows to formulate different goals and to build a compromise between stakeholders in their implementation. Thank you very much for your attention.
Congratulations. You're the daily winner coming in before time. Congratulations for that. There'll be a prize after.